there you are, and here I am, and here are the books. Let's do this. First one up today is Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead, and this one comes to us from Faber and Faber. I always read Barbara Kingsolver. I, in general, really, really enjoy her books. She's a prolific writer. Some of you will have read, Poisonwood Bible or Prodigal Summer, which I loved. This one, it's a biggish book. We're in the 540 pages. With that title, Demon Copperhead, I knew we were referencing David Copperfield, which Kingsolver obviously acknowledges. And I kind of put it off for a little bit, and I wonder now why I bothered putting this one off, because boy, oh boy, it is terrific. It's very much social justice. So I think she's done this extraordinary thing of modelling her narrative very much on almost, not the exact sequencing, because I don't remember all of David Copperfield, because that was a while back. But she's taken that Victorian orphan story and she's just transplanted the whole thing to modern day, the Appalachians, Virginia. And we have our main character, Damon, who gets renamed Demon, who is the trailer trash child, born to a teen mum, pretty but druggy, very friendly neighbours, the Peggotts living up the road. And it's how, once his mother hooks up with this undesirable character, Stoner, little Demon's life, which had been sort of lived in that idyllic, in a sense, sort of blissful ignorance, becomes super complicated because Stoner doesn't like him, wants him out of the picture, and then we get the foster system. So it's that narrative of following the lowest sort of the dregs of society, because he talks about himself this way, through all the vicissitudes of life, the different foster homes, and some are absolutely dreadful. So you kind of, how can I deal with this? To one or two which are a little bit better, because he does prove as a younger man that he's not only artistic, he's actually quite sporty. But it's sort of the slave labour. It's the bullying, it's being permanently hungry. And then once we get into this part of the narrative where he gets a sports injury, and then we go into the meat of what Kingsolver is dealing with, which is the opioid crisis in America. As I said, a very socially aware writer, and that's really minimizing everything. The one thing about this voice, if you read it for nothing else, about this novel, if you read if for nothing else, it is for this voice. This voice stays in my head. You get that distance from maybe the shuggy-bane bleakness of his existence, because it is bleak in places, but it's heartbreaking, it's a little bit harrowing, but it's also very, it's powerful, it's true. There's something this boy is almost recounting his life. So you get that distance of someone saying, yeah, these are the things that happened to me. So we're not living them in the immediate, which gives us a kind of a break from some of the bits that are maybe sadder than others. And it is ultimately, if you've read your Copperfield, it goes to somewhere where we can all kind of relax and feel that it's not been all that awful. It's his self-awareness. It's his awareness of his position. And when asked, what do you want for yourself out of life? All he says is to live. An astonishing piece of writing, and definitely one for a book club even. I think there'd be a lot of conversation going on around that one. Stunning. Next one is Clarke by Holly Throsby, and that comes to us from Alan and Unwin, and I don't know if I read Goodwood, and then it was Cedar Valley. So Clarke is set in this same Gather region that Holly Throsby writes into. She writes into that sort of Australian rural sort of, you get a kind of a domestic feel. This is a setting where everything is manageable, where people know each other. They're not too big and too sort of too remote from each other. People kind of live in close quarters. Throsby is, she's nailed that small town writing. She She lets you become very close to a very small set of characters, and I really do love that. Somebody referred to this kind of writing as kitchen sink drama, and I think there's a little bit of that in her, in the feel of it, because it's what neighbours make of each other. What are the little mysteries? So we have in this two main characters, and a sort of historic thread. Let's say that the character that we're reading from her point of view mostly is Lele or Leonie Wallace, who's the neighbour of Barney Clarke. Barney Clarke has his own mysteries, but particularly relevant to his wife and what had happened to her. And all of these become unravelled as we go through the book. But Barney has been renting this house, and in this house lived a couple called Ginny and Lou Lawson. Okay, so there is referencing the Dawson story, because Ginny Lawson, if that doesn't wake up your brain, cells, I don't know what would, or what would. She has gone missing. Ginny Lawson, first her dog went missing, and now Ginny is supposed to have walked off and left Lou and their son Tobias. And Ginny, who's living, Leonie, who's living beside Ginny, sort of says, no, she'd never have done that. She'd never have left her son. What happened? The police come and dig that garden up because other circumstances related to Lou, who'd gone and married somebody else, begin to sort of point to maybe he wasn't as squeaky clean as he liked to make himself out to be. And there are obviously issues with were the police investigating properly, etc., etc. So we have Leonie, who's her garden overlooks this, and we've got Barney, who's living in this house, and he has no idea what's going on, really. He's in a kind of a grief riddled state because his wife, although still alive, is not with him, and he has a son who's no longer talking to him. So what is all of this? There's a little cast of characters. I love the voice. I love the kind of the rubbing shoulders with the people in this community. And particularly, I think, Throsby's prose, she's kept it succinct. It's a very clean and clever novel in her writing. There's nothing excess. It's like a masterclass in understatement. Yet her observations and her way of her descriptive work is she nails it every single time. It's a superb piece of writing, a lovely one for, if you don't want to be shook up or, turning those pages at, a million miles an hour, but you kind of want to savor a bit of atmosphere, and definitely the familiarity of get familiar with the characters. Just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Love that one. The last one up is a little Irish one. Well, it's not that little, really, by Alice Ryan. It's called There's Been a Little Incident. And this one comes to us from Head of Zeus. It's actually a debut. Now, it's Irish and it's debut, and there, I'm in heaven. Yes, a modern Maeve Binchy in a way. But she's very much her own thing, Alice Ryan. I absolutely love this, and I think it's one for you to take to, depending where you're reading, you're taking it to the beach, you're taking it out onto the porch, and you're just going to enter into this one and come out the other end. Or if you're curled up in front of the fire, brilliant. It's just such a lovely, heartwarming, funny, clever read. She's not trying to be clever, but it the way she fits everything in is just, she weaves in so many little stories, but we have a main thread, and the main thread is we have Molly Black, who's one of the Black clan, and this I think is the kind of why I'm saying it's so clever, is that she has a lot of characters to deal with in this family and manages to give them all just the right amount of time. But we're focusing in a way on Molly and what the absence of Molly does to these people in her family. So Molly's a young woman in her 30s, and she has this kind of habit of, when things get sticky or she's not sure emotionally where things are going to go, and sort of kind of tying herself down and who she's supposed to love, she kind of just runs. She gets out and moves away from the thing or from the situation that she's finding kind of emotionally overwhelming. There's nothing wrong in that. It's just her coping mechanism, because Molly, in short, is missing her mother. Now, she's an orphan of both parents at this point, and her mother had been a kind of larger than life, very loving woman, and Molly's a bit unmoored by her mother's death. But she has this incredibly loving and supportive family, and she checks in with them. She's forever texting them, but she maintains that relationship. But one day she goes missing, kind of for good. They've sort of really don't know where she's gone missing to, and this part of the narrative is about what happens to them, because they all decide, the Black clan come and they all sort of cram themselves into this tiny semi-detached house in suburban Dublin, and they're all level of relationship to her, including the best friend who's kind of an adopted family member, and they all want to decide, they all want to have their say on what are we supposed to do, because there's the older aunt who says, nonsense, she's 30, leave her alone, she'll sort herself out, to the kind of the uncle who'd been an in loco parentis sort of thing. He'd been mostly sort of growing her up and looking after all her needs. And he really thinks he ought to be, finding out more about her. There are sort of tough, sculpted sports fanatic women who are trying to keep an edge on things when they're getting into their 40s and who learn to soften. There are neighbours who hate each other who end up making pies for each other. They're girls who've given up on love or given up on ever being understood by anybody, who find themselves, with better prospects. There are pregnancies, there's betrayal, there's every single thing in this. Is what you might want for life and what you mightn't want from life. There's alcoholism, there's redemption, there's healing, and there's a trip to Bali. So that makes it all a bit of a hoot. I'll tell you one thing, this Black family, they're infuriating. They're in your face in a way, or for Molly, they're just almost too much. But you love every single one of them. And in a way you sort of feel, God, I'd love to be sitting in a room with them and all of that going on. At least maybe for an afternoon. Might get a bit much after that. Terrific. That's it. Back into your books.